Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Studioloo, and welcome to another episode of Short Story Scraps. So I had a bit of an idea today that I think for maybe a few of these episodes, not necessarily in order, but maybe patched monthly, I will do the country diary of an Edwardian lady because, so many of us are very inspired by the visuals and the handwriting in Edith Holden's iconic book, but how many of us have actually read it or know what she was saying or what she was inspired by in her diary? So I was thinking it might be fun to kind of go through those. So I think for the beginning of this, as I am getting started here in the year 2025, it's already just turned March. So I think I'll do a couple of catch-up episodes where we'll cover January in this episode, February in the next, and then I'll be caught up and we'll have kind of a monthly of a chapter of the country diary of an Edwardian lady. So I will get started now. There is a little intro description written by Michael Joseph from Webb and Bauer, just describing the book as a facsimile reproduction of a naturalist's diary for the year of 1906. Edith Holden recorded in words and paintings the flora and fauna of the British countryside through the changing seasons of the year. So, Nature Notes for 1906 is when this was all recorded, by Edith B. Holden. She was at Gowanbank, Oulton, Warwickshire. And she begins with a poem from Byron. To sit on rocks, to muse o'er flood and fell, to slowly trace the forest's shady scene, where things that own not man's dominion dwell, and mortal foot hath ne'er or rarely been, to climb the trackless mountain all unseen, with the wild flock that never need a fold, alone o'er steeps and foaming falls to lean, this is not solitude, 'tis but to hold, converse with nature's charms and view her stores unrolled. So quite a nice way to dive in. And then we begin in January with absolutely beautiful images of blue tits, coal tits, and great tits that she has illustrated on these tiny little branches in lovely shades of yellow and blue. And then she begins to do a little bit of perspective on January, saying that it's named from the Roman god Janus, who is represented with two faces looking in opposite directions, as retrospective to the past and perspective to the coming year. She notes January 1st being New Year's Day, January 6th, 12th day Epiphany. And then we get into Fairy Queen by E. Spencer. Then came old January, wrapped well in many weeds to keep the cold away. Yet did he quake and quiver like to quell, and blew his nails to warm them if he may, for they were numbed with holding all the day. And hatchet keen, with which he felled wood, and from the trees did lop the needleless spray. And then she shares a few mottos. Genevieve, freeze the pot upon the fire. If the grass do grow in Genevieve, it grows the worse for it all the year. A wet January, a wet spring. The blackest month of all the year is the month of Genevieve. And then Old Year Leaves from Mackenzie Bell is shared along with some beautiful images of dead leaves of elm, oak, beech, chestnut, and sycamore. Her ability to capture light and shadow on crinkled leaves is breathtaking. And maybe if it's convenient for you, as we read this book, you can flip through, maybe craft with your copy. I have several copies of this book with which I hoard, and every now and then I use. I'm going to try to get better at using some of this book, so we'll see how it goes. Anyhow, let's get into Old Year Leaves. The leaves, which in the autumn of the year fall auburn tinted, leaving reft and bare their parent trees in many a sheltered lair, where winter waits and watches, cold, austere, will lie in drifts, and when the snow drops cheer, the woodland shadows, still the leaves are there, though through the glades the balmy southern air, and birds and boughs proclaim the spring is here. Then we have Frost at Midnight from S.T. Coleridge. Therefore all seasons shall be sweet to thee, whether the summer clothe the general earth with greenness or the red breast, sit and sing, betwixt the tufts of snow on the bare branch of mossy apple tree, while the night thatch smokes in the sun thaw, whether the eve drops fall, heard only in the trances of the blast, or if the secret ministry of frost shall hang them in silent icicles, quietly shining to the quiet moon. So I'm kind of left wondering, how we build our inspirations these days, right? When you're journaling, maybe you randomly find a poem or a word snippet that inspires you and you paste it into your journal or your scrapbook or your art journal, whatever you're doing. I wonder how she chose what her inspirations and thoughts were as she did this monthly study. I think about the modern convenience of having things such as space in a home for a large library of books for cutting and pasting and reading, for that matter, or, libraries. Because of when she lived, what was her experience like, and how does it compare to how easily we were able to come across these kinds of inspirations? It's kind of interesting to think about. Also, I wonder about, the differences in how education was back then. I think a lot of memorization was done. And I would say a lot of advanced text was read by young people at the turn of the last century. I feel like these days, it sort of feels like kids are reading, books that are more designed for children, rather than Charles Dickens. But I think based on a lot of the older books that I find where they've been awarded to a child in grade 3 or something or at a church, it's like the text is quite advanced. I often wonder about the differences in reading material for children between then and now and what it was like. Anyhow, let's continue. January 1st, New Year's Day, bright and cold with hard frost. The 5th, great gale of wind and rain from the southwest. So we're getting into the journal entries now, which she would put the month at the top and then just almost like numbered dots down the side. She will put the day and then her little entry about whatever happened that day. So on the 11th of January, visited a small wood on the canal bank to get violet leaves. On moving away some of the dead leaves, lying beneath the trees, I discovered a wild arum plant, thrusting its white sheath up from the soil. When I removed the outer covering, the pale yellow leaves with dark spots were quite discernible, rolled tightly around each other, and beautifully packed away inside the white skin. I noticed that many of the leaf buds on the elderberry bushes had burst into green. The 12th. Saw several moorhens feeding on a newly ploughed field not far from a pond. And a moorhen is, they're also called a water hen. And she has illustrated one, this beautiful gray hen with quite a lovely rounded but still pointed beak. Beautiful bird. On the 14th, a great gale of wind and rain. The 18th, today I saw a curious oak tree growing in a field near Elmdon Park. From a distance, it looked as if the tree were dead and the other half covered with glossy green leaves. On examination, the main trunk and 2 of the main branches proved to be of a species of oak that has mossy acorn cups and large, deeply serrated leaves, leafless in winter. Growing out of the crown of the trunk and forming fully half of the tree was an evergreen or cork oak in full foliage. The join in the 2 trunks was scarcely perceptible. January 23rd, sharp frost and thick fog in the early morning. The fog cleared off about 9:30 a.m. and the sun shone brightly. Went for a country walk. Every twig on every tree and bush was outlined in silver tracery against the sky. Some of the dead grasses and seed vessels growing by the roadside were especially beautiful. Every detail of them sparkling with frost crystals in the sunshine. I saw great flocks of rooks and starlings down on the fields and a pair of beautiful bullfinches on a hawthorn bush. The gorse was in blossom, till within a week or two ago, but the sharp frosts of the past week have nipped off the bloom. The mild winter has brought out the hazel catkins wonderfully early. The small green flowers are fully expanded on some of the catkins, and the pretty little red stars of the female flowers are appearing. The green leaves are out in the woodbine too, making little spots of green among the undergrowth. And she has on the opposite page 8, she has done a beautiful illustration of ivy and hazelnut catkins and their female flowers and woodbine. And I think what that does is it really demonstrates nature study. When you're getting started can be quite intimidating because you're thinking like, how do I learn? There's so many trees, so many flowers, mushrooms, like, you think of all the different things and how do I learn them? And I think Edith Holden presents us with a very approachable way, like a couple things at a time, and like, it's the same way that I operate seasonally. So I see a plant I've never seen before. I take a picture. We are graced today with things like Google Lens and all of the various apps to identify birds and, trees, leaves, all those things that, you can find your favorite kind of apps and do some research. But even Google Lens will often help you to identify that thing. And then you can take a picture, which you can bring home with you. You can think about, looking it up and like how to illustrate it. So depending on why you're doing nature study, be it for education or homeschooling or your own art, it's really approachable in small bits that way. And the seasons, I think, really help us because it helps you to connect with where you live and how to kind of document what's around you. Edith was obviously in Warwickshire. She was able to give us a really lovely picture of the British countryside. But I think that we have a lot of unique environments in the world. I would love to see more of this kind of diary from all over the world. Specifically like South America. That would be amazing. January 26th, the last few weeks, our own and our neighbors' gardens have been haunted by a very curious robin. The whole of the upper plumage, which in ordinary robins is brown, shaded with olive green, is light silvery gray in this bird, so that when flying about it looks like a white bird with a scarlet breast. I hear that it was seen here last summer. It is so inconspicuous, it is a wonder it has not fallen a victim to somebody's gun. So that too, I think, tells you, you can do this kind of thing in your own backyard. You don't need to, if you don't have access to a forest or somewhere that you can, maybe you're limited because of mobility or the geography you live in. You can do these kind of things in a micro kind of way, right? Take a look at the ground in your backyard. I think that she, again, leads us to the accessibility of nature study. We move into January 27th. Primroses, palanthus, winter aconite, mazarin, and snowdrops are all in flower in the garden. Every mild morning now, the birds are singing, and they continue more or less throughout the day. So this connects us with our senses, right? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? It's not only about the visuals. It's nice to expand on in your writing what's going on around you. January 29th. Today I picked some daisies in a field and saw some yew in blossom. The young nettles are shooting up and a number of herbaceous plants are shewing new green leaves. As foxglove, treacle mustard, ground ivy, etc., the groundsel is in flower too. Plowing and hedging and ditching are going on everywhere. This has been a wonderfully mild January. Then she shares from Burns, To a Mountain Daisy. Wee modest crimson-tipped flower, thou'st meet me in an evil hour, for I maun crush among the stour, thy slender stem. To spare thee now is past my power, thou bonny gem. Alas, it's no thy neighbour sweet, the bonny lark companion meet, bending thee 'mang the dewy wheat, white-speckled breast, when upward springing blithe to greet the purpling east. Could blew the bitter biting north upon thy humble birth, yet cheerfully thou glinted forth amid the storm, scarce reared above thy parent earth thy tender form. The flaunting flowers are garden-sealed, high sheltering woods, and was mouth shield, but thou beneath the random bield, O cloud or stone, adorns the histy stibble-field, unseen alone. There in thy scanty mantle clad, thy snowy bosom sunward spread, thou lift'st thy unassuming head in humble guise, but now the share of tears thy bed, and lo thou lies. Then she has this lovely illustration of a daisy, the Bellis perennis, and shares wee modest crimson tippet flower, also from Burns. Above all, florists in the mead, that I love most these florists, white and reed, such that men call daisies in our town. That's from Chaucer. Daisies smellness, but most quaint, from Fletcher. From Clare, daisies, yet flowers of lowly birth, embroiderers of the carpet earth, that gem the velvet sod. And then from there she shares a large verse, To a Daisy, from Wordsworth. The winter in the garland wears, that thinly decks his few grey hairs. Sprint parts the clouds with softest airs, that she may sun thee. Whole summer fields are thine by right, and autumn melancholy white doth in thy crimson head delight, when rains are on thee. In shoals and banks a Maurice train, thou greetest the traveller in the lane, pleased at his greeting thee again, yet nothing daunted, nor grieved if thou be set at naught, and oft alone in nooks remote we meet thee like a pleasant thought, when such are wanted. Child of the year, that round dost run thy pleasant course when day's begun, as ready to salute the sun as lark or leveret, thy longest praise thou shalt regain, nor be less to future men than in old time. Thou art not vain, art nature's favourite. Again, that was To a Daisy from Wordsworth. Then she says a short little verse from Shelley. Daisies, those pearled oratory of the earth, the constellated flowers that never set. And the final page of January, we conclude with a beautiful illustration of the yew, Taxus baccata, in its various forms, the pods and seeds, and the little sprigs of the evergreen-like flora and leaves on that tree. So she shares a spray of yew with male flowers, the fruit, the female flowers in their different stages, and she's done like a magnification, trying to put some clever detail into what she's illustrating. So the yew is generally dioecious, the male and female flowers being borne on different trees. Its poisonous properties reside in the foliage, the fleshy part of the berries being quite harmless, though the seed is injurious. Yew trees live to a great age, some in this country being recorded as 1,000 years of age. It is supposed to have been planted by the Druids in their sacred groves. In later days, it was planted in the churchyards as a symbol of mourning, and some say to provide boughs for the archers. Then she shares Yew Trees by William Wordsworth. There was a yew tree, pride of Lorton Vale, which to this day stands single in the midst of its own darkness, as it stood of yore, not loth to furnish weapons for the bands of Umfraville or Percy, ere they marched to Scotland's hearths, or those who crossed the sea, and drew their sounding bows at Azincourt, perhaps at earlier Crécy or Poitiers. Of vast circumference and gloom profound, this solitary tree, a living thing, produced too slowly ever to decay, a form and aspect too magnificent to be destroyed, but worthier still of note. Are those fraternal four of Borrowdale joined in one solemn and capacious grove, huge trunks, and each particular trunk a growth of intertwisted fibres, serpentine, upcoiling and inverterately convolved, nor uninformed with fantasy and looks that threaten the profane, a pillared shade upon whose grassless floor of red-brown hue, by sheddings from the pining umbrage tinged, perennially beneath whose sable roof of boughs, as if for festal purpose, decked with unrejoicing berries, ghostly shapes may meet at noon-eyed, fear and trembling hope, silence and foresight, death the skeleton, and time the shadow there to celebrate, as in a natural temple shattered o'er, with altars undisturbed of mossy stone, united to worship, or in mute repose to lie and listen to the mountain flood, murmuring from Glaramarras in most caves. So that concludes the Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady for the month of January of 1906. So that last verse from Wordsworth was almost dark, right? So here's the things that we don't even realize as, you know, we putter about with this book in our journaling. So yeah, I'm happy to share it with you. I hope you enjoyed January. Like I mentioned, I'll sort of rapid fire February out because we've already passed February, and then I will release March, you know, as part of a regular monthly kind of inclusion in this, what I hope to be weekly series of short story scraps. So that being said, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of reading, and have a lovely day. We'll talk soon. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now.